I'm on the clock in 23 slow drafts right now. I only have an hour until we go live on Ship Chasing. I'm also going to try to fit in another spin of the wheel, but we know I'm not going to get all that done in 60 minutes. This is Stealing Signals. Let's get it. What is up? The few of you that are here, I just decided to do this like 10 minutes ago. I just sent out a really long piece I've been writing and working on for like a week and writing all morning about the Eliminator format in Underdog. That just went out to Stealing Signal subscribers. You can always subscribe there, bengretch.substack.com. Long intro before the paywall hit. There is some stuff behind the paywall that is a premium newsletter, but you still get stuff when you're on the free side. Thanks for showing up to anyone who's here or anyone who does end up showing up. I also want to say real quick at the top of the video, really appreciate all those subscriptions. And then it might be sharp for people that are interested in when I decide these impromptu times to go live to put on notifications, something that had been brought to my attention as probably a good fit for this because I am prone to just jumping on. I've been writing all morning, and so I haven't been making picks. I'm behind. We got a lot to get to. I put in the show notes 21 Underdog picks. I just counted, and I think I got on the clock in 2 more. I'm on the clock in 23 right now. I'm going to be drafting for the next hour regardless. Figured I'd just fire up the stream. I had told you guys on Tuesday that I was planning to do another one of these streams later in the week. I had planned to do it Friday, but I'm going to hit the links, hit the golf course tomorrow. So I decided I'd just fire one up here, do some picks, and then get out before Ship Chasing, which is at the top of the hour. Anyone watching now, make sure you are there at 3 Eastern on the Ship Chasing YouTube channel. We will I think we're doing a draft today over there, a live draft, a fast draft, instead of all these slow drafts. But let's start making these picks because I got to make about a pick every 3 minutes to get through all of these by the time Ship Chasing starts. I thought it'd be a fun little exercise. Let's see. We got, the chat is saying overlapping lulls. This is what I was worried about. I was talking to Pete about like what his schedule is. I was trying to not do that. I won't do that again. That was a mistake on my part then. I should have done a better job of seeing his schedule. I feel like he's always live on something, and I don't definitely want to overlap. Lowell's great show over there. This is a team out of the 108, Bijan, Chris Olave, Devonta Smith, Trey McBride, Terry McLaurin, Marquise Brown, Jaxon Smith-Njigba. We're getting to these later rounds. Part of the reason I wanted to go live again later this week is I've made a lot of picks in the last couple of days since we were here on Tuesday. I spent yesterday recording the next several pods for Stealing Bananas with Sean. We did the NFC stuff. We did the AFC stuff last week. We did the NFC stuff yesterday. That's all going to come out over the next week. But yeah, this is a team that I got 5 receivers through 7 rounds, like we've talked about recently. It has a Bijan anchor. It has a Trey McBride. It's a fun team. DeAndre Swift's a really nice RB2 in the 8th, and then it gets Jaden Daniels, which it had McLaurin. I talked about my preference to do with Daniels to do him when you already have McLaurin booked. I probably took him ahead of ADP. I got him at ADP. That was a really nice pick. I don't have anyone starred here. I can go any direction, really, when you get to this point. It is getting a little bit trickier to just fire off these picks for me in these rounds. So it's kind of fun to jump on. For me, wanting to do a lot of early wide receiver picks, considering the tight ends in certain pockets, considering some of the QBs, it's fairly easy to just figure out what I'm going to do at certain spots. We start to get here, I got to start thinking about correlation. I got to start thinking probably at least a little bit about some buys. I got to think about my quarterbacks, which I'm usually just kicking that can down the road. I don't have any reason to go QB here that I can see. There's no Miami or Jacksonville moves. I don't like going tight end 2 here. I could I'm not really big on Hawkinson. I could see taking Schultz, but this would be well ahead of ADP. But I could see taking Schultz as a solid tight end 2 before you start to get into the really questionable tight end 2s. I do only have 5 receivers. I could go wide receiver again, although this is where it really thins out for me. Shaheed's an option. Best ball guy brings him up. I think I want to be going running back here. Nick Chubb behind ADP. I think I just want to build out RB. I actually have the Daniels McLaurin thing. This is a good spot for Brian Robinson and or Austin Eckler. But I think I'm going to take Robinson. I feel just a little bit better about Robinson's overall profile going into 2024. I think that's a good fit with this Washington thing that I'm building out. Gets me an RB3. Let's go make some more picks. Do I have any other short timers? No, they're all like 4 hours and above. All right, cool. We can just start firing them off. We're going to jump in here. I have some tight ends starred here. 98 ADP. We're at 95. It might just be a quick Njoku pick here. I go Lamb, Waddle, Kyron, Christian Kirk, Xavier Worthy, Marquise Brown, Kenneth Walker. I'm back on the clock at 8:11. I have not taken a tight end. This is very rare for me, as you guys have seen. Nathan Roof says Jaden doesn't feel like an RB dump off guy. Completely agree. That's a big part of why I went B-Rob in the back of my head was like you're thinking of how his mobility impacts the rushing efficiency, and so I'm thinking more of the rushing upside guy. We talked a lot about that with Derrick Henry on the last show, but that you're also making a directional bet on the entire offense. You're making a directional bet on Washington being good, on Jaden Daniels being good, on them scoring touchdowns, and maybe B-Rob is the one who's getting some of those goal line works as kind of the up the middle guy. Yeah, huge QB run here that the chat is pointing out right before I got up. I have not taken a QB yet. And Jaden Daniels is there. I don't think I had a Washington player on this team. I have both Waddle and Christian Kirk. So Tua and Trevor Lawrence become a little bit intriguing, but at 116 and 119, when do I get back up? 119. And because there's 2 of them, we did just have a big QB run, but I want to hope that one of those guys gets to my next turn. If not, I'll be having to do some interesting stuff. And Njoku, Bowers, Bindle says, why Njoku over Bowers? I think you have to like both of them, but Njoku had a career high in a lot of areas last year. A career high targets per out run, career high yards per out run. They figured out some stuff with him as kind of the block and release outlet guy instead of like a dump off to running backs. They used Njoku in that way, and he was so good at it. I mean, it really unlocked him. I understand that was all with Joe Flacco, but I really like the Njoku profile, especially as on my tight end 1. Bowers is a really kind of intriguing tight end 2 upside play with some of the earlier tight ends. I kind of want to get both of them here. So hopefully Edison 99 is not watching this draft. I'm comfortable with the 5 receivers I have. I already have 2 running backs. I think an Njoku Bowers turn here would be pretty sick. I also took Njoku there because I don't have a lot of stack options. And I think Deshaun Watson comes on the board as a stack option with Njoku in a better way than Gardner Minshew does or Aiden O'Connell does for Brock Bowers. I have 2 KC receivers on this team. I can't stack up Lamb at this point. So there's a little bit of a tiebreaker for me here where it gives me an opportunity. Not a bandwagon mentions this. The Browns back stack is a crazy value overall. That's right. That's definitely a consideration there. So we'll see. I might get back on the clock there. We'll see if Bauer swings through, and I might take both of them in that league. I don't know. I'm scrolling down again. I just said I could just start firing them off. All right. This is Tyreek Hill, Neighbors, Kyron, Travis Kelce, Keenan Allen, Roma Dunze, Keon Coleman. I chased wide receiver a little bit after going running back, tight ended in 3-4. This has Neighbors, Dunze, and Keon Coleman. A lot of rookies. Tyreek Hill and Keenan Allen, the only vets of those top 5 receivers. I get Caleb Williams to stack with Keenan Allen, Raheem Mostert there in the 9th. I took him over Javonte Williams. I think I would rank Javonte Williams straight up ahead of Mostert, but it's close. I mean, Mostert scored 20-plus TDs last year. We need to be in on him at this price, I think, kind of regardless. I'm back up. Tua has some ADP value here. I could close out a 2 QB build. I have both Mostert and Tyreek. I know I was doing a little bit of a directional thing when I took Mostert there. I didn't start Tua, but I think I was hoping Tua might come back around here. He does. It gives me the opportunity to have the quarterback stacked with both of my veteran receivers. I did Keenan and Adunze, which is part of why I took Caleb where I did, a little ahead of ADP. I have a Chicago double here. I would have a Miami double there. There's no one else that's screaming at me. We're going to grab Tua and just keep plugging into our next draft. Let's go to this Best Ball Mania team. That's two kind of early-ish QBs for me, but that is that QB window that Sean Siegel's written about in the past, and I think is the one that I feel like kind of defined it, where we can see some real upside from QB before you get into the really thin bets. And that QB window is kind of making a return this year. It's been pushed up, like it was pushed up a little bit last year, and it missed the year prior because there was just like, well, Jalen Hurts was kind of in that QB window the year prior when he really broke out. I attacked it here as well with Kyler Murray. I think there's kind of starts in the 7th round. That's more about like the 8th, 9th, 10th, 11th round-ish. You start to get to 12th, 13th, 14th. You start to get into QBs that we just don't feel as strongly about. I think once you get down to Stafford and Rodgers, it really thins out in this range. The QB list that I'm looking at on screen here. Being able to play in this, Jordan Love, Jaden Daniels, Brock Purdy, Tua, Trevor Lawrence, Jared Goff, Justin Herbert, Kirk Cousins range. I mean, that's getting two of those guys. I feel pretty good about. Kyler, McCaffrey, Nico Collins, Malik Neighbors, Keenan Allen, Ladd McConkey, and Trey McBride is this build so far. So I stacked up Kyler with McBride, took him a little bit of ADP ahead of ADP. I think this is another one where I didn't have a lot of stack options, although I do still have. Oh, Caleb Williams is gone. I would have needed Caleb Williams to get back to me. Stroud's gone. I guess I have Herbert as an option as well. And I have Purdy. I don't know what I'm talking about. This is not a team where I have a lack of stack options. I have a few ways to play this. I could even play Malik Neighbors through Daniel Jones really late. So I don't think this needs to be a QB pick by any means. It's a one running back build so far, but with McCaffrey, I think I can hold out on the upside of Jonathan Brooks. The idea would be obviously with taking McCaffrey early, he's going to stabilize RB1 for the whole year, but certainly for the first part of the year. I really like taking Brooks when I have an anchor running back as my RB2 in these types of spots. I get a little bit of a discount. I do think with that ACL recovery, we might see them bring him along slowly, and you're really thinking that back-weighted production for him in his rookie season. Talked about that one recently as well. I do think they're going to try to be competitive this year. This is one that I have one of those little writing things on. Okay, so it's the Laporta McBride team. We've talked a lot about. This is the fun one where I ended up going Curtis Samuel, 22 picks ahead of ADP on the last stream. The chat was killing me for it. I was really hopeful that I would get a decent receiver to come back, and as you see, between that Samuel pick and Lockett, only Jamison Williams went off the board. A ton of running backs and tight ends. It was previously a really heavy receiver draft. I take Lockett there. And again, only one receiver, Cortland Sutton, before I get back up, which actually leaves me Mike Williams, who I think he's a guy we should probably talk about on one of these streams soon. I've been taking a decent amount of him. I think he's a good fit with Aaron Rodgers. The ADP value is Caleb Williams. I do have Rome Odunze on this team, but it's backed up at receiver. Adams, Christian Kirk, Rome Odunze, Curtis Samuel, Tyler Lockett is the receiver room. I have Laporta and McBride on this team. There's not a lot of good stack options here, though, actually, to be honest. Having a receiver from both the Raiders and the Seahawks is tough because I don't know that either of their quarterbacks is going to be a 17-week guy. And I have Curtis Samuel from Buffalo. Obviously, he's already gone. And Trey McBride from Arizona. You have Kyler Murray already gone. There is a Jared Goff out with Laporta, but that's coming up soon, as well as a Christian Kirk out with Lawrence, also coming up relatively soon. I could hit those guys in the next couple of rounds, but it's almost like I should be thinking about Caleb Williams here. I do kind of want to get that strong wide receiver 6, though, after I got caught in the avalanche here a little bit. I don't think there's another option. I mean, Javonte Williams is the top running back as well. He's a guy that I absolutely love. Talked a little bit about this, but I think I did. He's somebody you're going to see me take a lot of. The reasoning would be he had 264 touches last year. The other two guys that everyone thinks he's in a committee with, they had 103 and 107. They combined for 210. They were well below him even combined, about 50-plus touches behind him even combined. Javonte, very inefficient last year. Probably the least efficient starter. I mean, maybe Rachaad White was that guy, but we also knew he was coming off multi-ligament reconstruction surgery in his knee, and we weren't really expecting this like amazingly efficient season from him. And yet Sean Payton continued to use him a ton. Chat's asking, what about Estime? Estime doesn't catch many passes. I think they're going to use him like they use like Kyrie Robinson, Mike Bell, some of those dudes in Sean Payton's system. You go way back, and my very first article was about Sean as a fantasy writer in 2015. Was about Sean Payton's running back usage. He used to always have these three roles. He'd have like a type A, type B, type C. You have a passing down back. It was originally like Reggie Bush, then it was Darren Sproles, and it's been other guys, and then it was Alvin Kamara. But Kamara was one of the guys that kind of broke the mold. They also had just a rushing only back, and that was like a Kyrie Robinson. That was like a Chris Ivory. It was Mark Ingram early in his career. And if you go look at Mark Ingram's stats, you'll see what I'm talking about here, because after Pierre, and then there's one that does both, and that was Pierre Thomas. But after Pierre Thomas retired, then Mark Ingram became that back. And Mark Ingram's stats are, let's just pull them up. I know I said I was going to draft quick, but this is what happens when you get me going on a fun fact. We're going to go into Mark Ingram's career game log at Pro Football Reference. Look at his receiving. This is what I want to highlight here for you. First 3 years of his career, he gets 122, 156, and 78 carries, and he gets 11, 6, and 7 receptions. Basically no receiving at all. Year 4, 226 carries. He does jump up to 29 catches on 36 targets, but still very lightly used. That's when Pierre Thomas was still there. But I think Pierre Thomas maybe got hurt that year. Mark Ingram starts to do a little bit of both, plays that little bit of a different role. The next year, 50 catches, 46 catches, 58 catches. His rush attempts very similar, 166, 205, 230 during that time, but suddenly he's doing both, right? And then late in his New Orleans career, he got banged up. He ends up leaving New Orleans. We see the receiving fall off. But this is, number one, evidence of the Sean Payton element, where all of his running backs catch a ton of passes, or at least all the ones that aren't in that one role. I think Estime is going to be in that one role is kind of the point I'm making. Javonte's the Pierre Thomas or the Mark Ingram do them both kind of role. They used Jaleel and Pirine on, in passing enough that they didn't really have that power back last year, like the old Mark Ingram, but I think that's what they're trying to replace with Estime is my point here. They used Pirine as really just like a third down back last year. They used Jaleel as sort of a slasher type as well. He would have been, I guess, most comparable to like the Darren Sproles stuff. But then from a usage perspective, because Pirine only had like 50 carries and he had like 50 catches. I mean, that's what Sproles numbers used to look like. He would have almost as many catches as rush attempts, which is, pretty surprising. It's not exact. And that's like 10 years ago, the way that he was using those backs for the Saints way back then. But it is an interesting little element. My point is, I think what we saw, well, number one, my point is Javonte is the only guy on the roster that does both, that's big enough and does both. Jaleel's smaller. They also brought in this Blake Watson, who I think is a really interesting pass catching option, but he's smaller. Pirine could maybe do both, but they didn't use him that way last year. They kind of phased him out of any rushing. He only had the 50 carries, even though he was playing on third downs and catching some passes and stuff. And then Estime didn't catch passes in college. So you like, and then, so I don't know. I see the Javonte stuff as really, really bullish, that even though he was as inefficient as he was, even though he was coming off the major reconstruction from the knee, that they continued to use him that much and feature him that much. And they didn't really make a lot of big changes in this offseason. They added a UDFA and a fifth rounder. That was Estime, the fifth rounder. Blake Watson's the UDFA. Jaleel McLaughlin, the other UDFA. Pirine's obviously a journeyman vet. They've paid him a decent amount of money, but they've talked about, people have talked about he's going to get cut. I mean, obviously people don't love him. You look at the rest of that depth chart, Javonte's a really clear running back, lead running back. Paul's asking, is he a cut candidate? I mean, I think so. He's got a decent amount of money, and they paid him. He's got a decent amount of money guaranteed, but he's also can save them some money. They paid him a 2-year deal. They seem to, they just did this last year. They seem to like the deal that they made. They used him a decent amount. He had a role. So I think it's possible, if no one else steps up in the third down role, that they keep him because they just are content paying him that amount of money. But it does free up some money, and they did add 2 other running backs. So it does seem possible if those other guys hit in training camp. I think Jaleel's a cut candidate at this point as well, because they went and added Estime and they added Blake Watson. If Watson looks better than him in camp. They'll just go to the next UDFA, I think. So it's the biggest thing about the Broncos is with Bo Nix and with the Sean Payton system, there's going to be a ton of running back fantasy points. That's been talked about a lot. There's going to be a lot of running back receptions. David's bringing this up. There must have been New Orleans State seasons where we got usable games from 4 different running backs. I do think that's possible. My key on Williams is even though it was a rotation, he still was the guy who had 260 touches, even in a year where he wasn't healthy. Presumably he's a year healthier. I think at this price, 105 ADP, you're locking in like 80 targets, man. You're locking in 200 plus carries. And now you're just like free rolling the efficiency. I don't think you're locking that in. If he's really bad efficiency wise, again, I should say he probably does get benched or phased out in one way or another throughout the season. That's very plausible. He wasn't very good last year. That's important from an efficiency standpoint. And that's important to what his cost is. But Denver's offense sets up to be so beneficial for running back scoring. And Javonte is more entrenched in a role in that committee. It is a committee, but in a role in that committee than I think people realize. He is the main back in that committee. That's the main thing I'm trying to drive home. It's not a three-way committee. It is a Javonte Williams and then other roles do exist behind him committee. At least that's my read on it. It'll be interesting. I mean, there's scenarios where maybe Javonte gets traded or something. I've heard that speculated about. Let's get back to this pick. I love Javonte at this price. I don't think I'm going to take him here. I think I need to go. I was leaning towards the Caleb Williams pick or the Mike Williams wide receiver 6. Just take the fact that I was able to get 3 receivers from that tier as a positive. I also kind of like that I would be stacking up Curtis Samuel, Tyler Lockett, and Mike Williams, who all have such similar ADPs in 3 separate rounds. One of the advantages of reaching 22 picks ahead of ADP on Curtis Samuel is maybe I'll get a little bit of a different combination of wide receivers here. I do have 2 receivers of the week 12 bye. I'm adding a third one here, but I'm going to take Mike Williams here. It also opens up an Aaron Rodgers pick, potentially another quarterback option. We'll see if Caleb Williams continues to fall. Probably not going to come back around to me, but I would like to probably be stacking Caleb Williams with one of the veterans. I mean, I think a Dunze could be awesome for him, but probably if Caleb Williams really hits, it's because one of Keenan Allen or DJ Moore is really hitting and an Dunze is coming along, but I'd probably rather be like double stacking when I'm using a Dunze like we saw on the last roster. All right, let's get into some more of these. Ooh, I added a 3rd star to this one. So I do my little stars on the Best Ball Mania when I like a roster. This was one I was excited to share with you guys. I've put Tank Bigsby in the queue. Don't remember why I did that. Let's figure that out. CeeDee Lamb, Nico Collins, Stephon Diggs, CJ Stroud, Dalton Kincaid, Jaxon Smith-Njigba, Rashee Rice, well ahead of ADP there. Jaylen Warren and Trey Benson. Oh, this is the one where we took Chase Brown on the last show, and I hoped Tyjae Spears would come around. He did. I was able to lock up Spears, so a 0 RB build where my top 4 running backs are Jaylen Warren, Trey Benson, Chase Brown, and Tyjae Spears, 4 guys that I want in as many 0 running back builds as I can get. These are all guys that I really like for this year. And then I got just ridiculous ADP value. I got Dallas Goedert and Trevor Lawrence, who I have unstacked as my QB2. Both of them like 30 picks after ADP. Maybe this draft's going to get thrown out. I don't know. But I got Goddard and a 113 ADP, who I think is already a decent like last-ditch tight end in that tier as a kind of a bounce-back play. I got him at pick 143. I certainly am happy to take him as my tight end 2 at that price. And then I grabbed Trevor Lawrence without really any way to play Jacksonville because Gabe Davis was already off when I took him. Obviously, Brian Thomas, Christian Kirk, Evan Ingram were already off. That's why I threw Tank Bigsby into my queue. I decided that he'll have to go on the back end of my running back build. Maybe he catches a week 17 touchdown from Trevor Lawrence. But I mean, like at a certain point with Trevor Lawrence, you're going 30 picks past ADP. I can now do a 2 QB build and feel pretty comfortable with it. I already have CJ Stroud double stacked with Nico Collins and Stephon Diggs. It's a for the weekly upside in the playoffs, it's certainly a CJ Stroud goes off weeks 15, 16, 17 narrative, and Lawrence is now an advance rate player at 30 picks behind ADP. But I'm very comfortable with just doing that unstacked if I have to. And maybe it's Tank Bigsby that I add him as one small option for Jacksonville. But This has become a really fun build. It has only 5 receivers still. We're up to 4 strong running backs, probably done at tight end with Kincaid and Goddard, probably done at quarterback with Stroud and Lawrence. I'm probably looking to add at receiver right now. It does get so thin at this point that the top available wide receiver is Adam Thielen. We got Marvin Mims behind him. I'm a little concerned about that, getting back to Sean Payton's tendencies. Typically, ancillary receivers in Sean Payton's offenses, when they throw to the running backs that much, the ancillary receivers don't actually have a lot of value. It's like the main X receiver is the stud, and then you have rotational stuff. And since they added Troy Franklin, I'm just a little bit concerned about the Mims profile. Although on this roster, you got to get some upside somewhere. Behind him is Luke McCaffrey, another young player that I really like. But they both have Week 14 buys, and my Houston stack is Week 14. I guess that matters less here. I just got done writing a huge Eliminator article I mentioned at the top of the show, focused on buys quite a bit there. Rashad Bateman, an interesting bounce back candidate. Just saw some favorable stuff on the timeline from Matt Harmon on him. And that's a bring back on my Houston stuff. Another Week 14 buy. I think we're going to go to Rashad Bateman here. We got to get a 6th receiver. I saw some stuff I liked watching him last year as well. Statistically wasn't great, and there's been some issues, but they then decided to pay him some money this offseason. It seems like they're open to him being a part of their offense going forward. Let's jump into this puppy. I got Tua starred, but we're not into a range yet. We're only at pick 94. Why do I have Tua starred? Well, it's a Tyreek Hill, Devon Achane start. Stephon Diggs, Trey McBride, Terry McLaurin, Keon Coleman, Jaxon Smith-Njigba. I'm on the clock here at picks 94, and then we'll be soon back on the clock in pick 99. And then at 118, this is tricky. I gotta try to let Tua swing back to 118, I think. But with Tyreek and Achane, I definitely want. I'm not going to get him because Waddle went into 104. So even if he swings all the way back to 117, that drafter's probably going to grab Tua to complete that stack. Maybe not, but he's a badge bro. He's in a lot of these drafts. He seems to be making a lot of smart decisions. Be too easy is the handle. I don't think I'm going to take Tua this high, though, because there's a lot of QBs available. And I think if I was going to go this high, I do have Terry McLaurin in this build. If I was going to reach up for somebody, it would be Jaden Daniels. But I'll figure that out at 9:03. Here at 8:0 or at 8:10, I have 5 receivers locked up. I only have the 1 running back. Oh, God. Mostert's the running back pick, but I already have Achane. David Njoku's an intriguing pick here. Comes back on the Miami stuff. Cortland Sutton is a good value at this point as well. I just talked favorably about Njoku, though, and I'm going to take him as my tight end, too, because I have those 2 Miami players. You get that little Week 17 correlation. We're going to kick the RB2 can down the road. We're going to probably play tight end on the way back, QB on the way back. Kick the wide receiver 6 question down the road. I think that draft's going to come together all right, though. Best Ball Mania draft out of the 10-hole. So we've been doing a lot of early draft slots so far. 10-hole here, Garrett Wilson, Chris Olave, Josh Allen, Travis Kelce, Xavier Worthy, Keon Coleman, Deontay Johnson, and Jonathan Brooks is my RB1. I just got done talking about how I like him as an RB2. You can also do it this way, because you're playing that late season upside as your first part of your build, but now you want to get some guaranteed touches types guys. You can do that when you have. I know what I was thinking here. I have Josh Allen and Travis Kelce. I don't have to hit QB2 or tight end 2 anytime soon, and I did well at receiver with Garrett Wilson, Chris Olave, Xavier Worthy, Keon Coleman, Deontay Johnson. I like the top 5 there. Plenty of upside with those rookies. Deontay's a nice little stability piece in the back end. I really like the Wilson Olave 1-2 punch there. It gives me the ability to hammer running back in this range. So I started with Jonathan Brooks, and then the bet was that I could get some type of volume to come back, and guess who's the top running back by ADP? It worked out very well. It is Javonte Williams, who we were just talking about. I feel very comfortable about his touch volume, his touch load, the value of that, his role. I said that you're kind of free rolling the efficiency. I think the efficiency can be a concern, that it could be more of a floor play. But that's what I'm looking for right here with Jonathan Brooks. The hope is year 2 coming out of the ACL tear that he's going to be a little bit more efficient. Now, this is an eliminator. Just wrote the really big eliminator piece. We talked about it a little bit. I got some feedback from some of you guys on some recent shows that you liked some of the eliminator talk. I talked about how I think people need to be a little bit more aggressive, be willing to build a little bit more extremely than you would think in an eliminator. So this is a 0 RB, but in the 6th round, at the end of the 6th, I did go running back and take David Montgomery. I'm not quite sure why. Kind of breaks the rules of the stuff that I wrote. Tyreek Hill, Nico Collins, Sam Laporta, Amari Cooper, Keenan Allen. I did already have 4 sort of veteran wide receivers, and maybe felt pretty solid about that part of it, but you still want redundancy. Laporta's a good pick. I have not gone elite quarterback yet. I talked about that as an option. Chris says, Gretch, you need to guess who can draft another Sape and not talk because we want to hear you. That's funny. I think we'll probably do some guests. I've talked to some people. One of those people is my brother who lives in another state. I might do some brotherly segments, and he could pop on. We could do some fast drafts. It would be for that purpose. I talked to him about that exact thing, that I'd have to get him hooked up to share his screen. He lives down in Arizona, and he could do some picks for us. We could talk through it. He's 2 years older than me. We've been playing fantasy football together for 25 years. You know, he's been right there with me this whole journey. So I think you guys would probably enjoy some of that stuff, hearing some of the back and forth. But we'll see, you know, when that works and if that we can get that scheduled. But it's a good idea, and it's something I've considered. 4 good wide receivers and Laporta. I took Montgomery. I think also with Montgomery, one of the reasons I like him in the eliminator is the week 5 bye. And he's just sort of a stable type of player. He's going to be a decent RB1 for a 0 RB type build. There's a lot of value at running back. That must be why I did that. But then we see 4 receivers go with the turn. JSN. I passed on a Dunze there, was the ADP value. I guess that was, you know what? That's what it was. It was kind of like I didn't want to reach beyond a Dunze and disrespect him by drafting like a Keon Coleman or a Brian Thomas ahead of him. But I had Keenan Allen on this team already, and I didn't really want to stack a Dunze with Keenan Allen on an eliminator team. JSN going 71. I know I was considering JSN. I made this pick this morning. I was hoping, I think JSN would come back around. He does not. But we do get Deontay Johnson coming back around. We get Evan Ingram as well. Potential for a solid QB2. I was also looking at Burrow on this draft. I do think you kind of still want to stack where you can. I'm going to take Deontay Johnson as a wide receiver 5. It's a very veteran-ass eliminator wide receiver room. But, I mean, it's a veteran-ass team. You had David Montgomery. Sam Laporta, the one fun piece at tight end. Let's see what Alex P. Keaton says. Bateman's 5th-year option was voided due to not accruing enough seasons. Bateman was extended technically 1 year, but are at 5th year. I would be careful reading the extension. Okay. Well, maybe I was reading that too favorably, but he's already on the roster. That's a good note, though. I wasn't planning on being really heavily on Bateman or anything, but it's a good note. Oh, here's one where we talked last time about me putting some notes. I put a Schultz and 10 note here, which is a great thing to put on screen when I'm broadcasting this in a slow. Everyone else knows exactly what I'm going to do 2 rounds from now, or try to do. I did that because I took CJ Stroud unstacked at 66. I really like Stroud. He falls 16 picks after ADP. I did not have a Texans receiver on this team. It's a Bijan Robinson, Brandon Ayuk, Jalen Waddle, T. Higgins, Dalton Kincaid, CJ Stroud team through 6 rounds, only 3 receivers, 1 each at the other positions. This needs to be a receiver. The top receiver on the board, 4th by ADP, is JSN. We're just going to add him. I would say tune into the NFC West edition of Stealing Bananas, little tease here, they call it in the industry, for some JSN propaganda mostly from my co-host Sean Siegel. This is the next draft we're going to jump into. Garrett Wilson, Jonathan Taylor, Zay Flowers, Travis Kelce, Roma Dunze, Jordan Addison, DeAndre Swift, Najee Harris. Took a Najee Harris. Oh, this is the one where Sean was in the chat telling me I needed to go Pittsburgh, and I said, well, there's 2 Pittsburgh running backs coming around. I'll take one. I clicked Najee over Jaylen Warren solely for Sean Stutzman. I want that to be clear. He wanted me to take Najee. I wanted to take Warren. I said, you know what? I'm going to do this one for Sean. 3 running backs on this team already, but there was a lot of running back value. I already had 4 receivers, and there wasn't a lot there at receiver, and I guess I was just like, you know what? I got to get strong at running back because that's what the draft room wants me to do. I do have Kelsey. The receiver value is a little bit more reasonable at this point, but I don't love the names. Tyler Lockett and Mike Williams both went in the 5 picks before me, almost made it back to me. I would have liked to click in those. Romeo Doubs is the top name here, followed by Khalil Shakir. I think both of them are propped up a little bit too much right now relative to the strength of their roles. Rashid Shaheed probably be my pick, or Joshua Palmer, actually. I think I kind of like Joshua Palmer here. I'm not taking a lot of him. The alternative is I can go QB. I don't have a Dallas player, but Dak Prescott has fallen 20 picks past ADP. I don't really like playing them later. Jaden Daniels, Brock Purdy. Jaden Daniels you can backstack, and he's fun. He's after ADP. You don't really even need to stack him with his mobility. You guys can tell by my voice that I'm getting a little too excited about Jaden Daniels right now. Justin Herbert's 127. The other reason I was thinking Palmer is I could grab Herbert. I don't get back on the clock until 131. But I wouldn't take Herbert at this turn. That does make the Palmer thing a little bit trickier. I got to get a late rounder on GM to you guys. I got some GMs at the beginning. I'm not the biggest GM guy, but I get it. Good morning to you guys too. I guess I got to become a GM, guys. Is what we got to do. I'm gonna take Daniels here. I might take Palmer on the swing back to get that wide receiver 5, and then see if Herbert comes all the way around. But I don't really mind if Palmer goes at the turn, because I think getting Herbert to come back to me might be the tricky part of that plan, and I didn't want to overpay for him. So I'm going to just take the upside of Daniels, and we're going to be a little thin at wide receiver on this draft, but we did get 4. All right, back to another eliminator here. Let's see. Tyreek Hill, Nico Collins, Malik Neighbors, Keenan Allen, Dalton Kincaid. We looked at this one last time. I explained the Tyreek Hill 101 in an eliminator idea. I get Kincaid down there. We've spread out the buys well. Lad McConkey is the top receiver available. I have back-to-back picks here. I'm going to take McConkey. I like getting a little rookie upside here. I like the week 5 buy, which I don't have yet, and it's an early season buy. This is a really fun upside-based team. I'm going to keep playing it that way. Talked a little bit in my write-up about how you can stack some of the later buys as well and treat it like kind of a cash game. If you get to week 12, you make $50. You 5x your entry. If you make it to week 14, you get $100. You 10x your entry. I think people are going to say, well, I don't want to do the late buys because things get really difficult. The pods get more difficult. They get harder to advance from by percentages, and they're better teams later in the year. And that's true. But if you stack all your buys week 12, week 14, you actually are, you can kind of play, like if the draft doesn't go the way you want it to, and you kind of move that way. We got Michael watching both shows. That's hilarious. Just got a shout out on the Wolves for this new show. Love it. Paul says, are you getting your badge this year? I mean, I hope so. I got nothing. I can't play the battle royales and the daily stuff. It's only the full season stuff. I did about 100 drafts last year. I didn't win anything big. I wrote about this in Signals. I was like 2 points away from making the BBM final. I was hoping to be a first year badge earner, but I wasn't able to get there. We'll see. That's the goal, right? Is to earn that badge. Michael, yeah, shout out to Lols, and they gave me a shout out. I appreciate that from them. But I'm just impressed that Michael's watching both shows right now. That's fantastic. I took McConkey here. I got to figure out what I want to do. I do kind of like I can play it through 3 QBs late. Evan Ingram has the same buy as Kincaid. Can't do that in an eliminator. You guys know what I'm going to do, right? You guys see it coming? Scrolling down to JSN and just taking him 7 picks ahead of ADP. Another unstacked buy. I don't have any week 10 buys yet. It gives me 6 receivers through the first 7 rounds. Very imbalanced build. Again, go check out bengretch.substack.com for that Eliminator piece if you want to understand why I'm building imbalanced in a format where you would ostensibly want to shoot for floor, and I think people think floor, they think balance. Back up here on the 70 at the 704. This was not, I don't believe. I got to go check. I clicked on the one that was 3 hours. The Chihuahua. This is not an Eliminator. Jamar Chase, Saquon Barkley, Malik Neighbors, Amari Cooper, Mark Andrews, George Kittle. We went 2 tight ends here. Only 3 receivers through 6. Do have a running back plus the 2 early tight ends. We're on the clock at 7:04. I starred Brian Thomas. I've been out on Brian Thomas. I have not drafted Brian Thomas yet. I've had some negative comments about him. His ADP has fallen, though, down to 75 here in the 7th round. I can understand this. He was at like 65 pre-draft, and I remember talking about him on Ship Chasing, and Pat was talking about how he had to rise because of his landing spot, his first-round capital, and I understood that point. I've basically not been paying attention to him, but I didn't really internalize it. He had now fallen to a point where I think you can feather him in at this point when the opportunity cost is that JSN, Deontay Johnson tier. I thought he was way too rich before, but we're now at a point where the elite QBs are mostly gone. The running backs, this is not a pocket of running back I need to get into, and the elite tight ends are gone. Once you get him 10 picks behind George Kittle and the elite tight ends are gone, I think that's a wide receiver range that I'm comfortable making the rookie upside bet on Brian Thomas. And this is going to be my first Brian Thomas selection. Excited to actually get him on that team. Gretch, what are your thoughts on Ryan Grubb's impact on Seattle's passing game offense this season? Talked about this a bunch on Stealing Bananas, the NFC West edition. It's going to be a few days. I think we did that as our 4th of the 4 divisions. Probably will come out on like Monday or Tuesday. But I've gotten this question a bunch because of the UW connection. And Sean gave me the floor to kind of go on this discussion for a little bit of a while. So good place to get that full discussion will be coming up. Another BBM team here, 4 hours to go, and I have 2 stars on it. Jamar Chase, Brandon Ayuk, Malik Neighbors, Zay Flowers. The 2 stars refers to me liking the team quite a bit. Jamar Chase, Brandon Ayuk, Malik Neighbors, Zay Flowers, Dalton Kincaid, Kenneth Walker, Joe Burrow. Got Rashee Rice in the 8th. This is the one where it was, getting him at pick 92 was wild. Raheem Mostert in the 9th as my RB2. He comes in a little bit behind ADP, a lot of ADP value on this draft to also get a lot of players that I like. Every single pick has been behind ADP as I scroll down here. Malik Neighbors only by 0.2, and Jamar Chase going pick 5 is very slightly behind ADP. But the other ones are all like 4 picks plus behind ADP. A lot of them a half round or even more. Rashee Rice goes a little more than a half round, I guess, is all. Anyway, it's nice to get ADP value on players that you actually like. This is a 1-2-5-1 build right now. We're in the 10th round. You can go any direction from a 1-2-5-1 is really the way that I would put that. I don't think you want to necessarily go tight end, though. It's not really the pocket to grab your tight end, too. Could do the Dalton Schultz thing. I have Burrow stacked up with Chase. I don't have a Denver bring back. Is this a situation? Nope. Javonte's off the board. And Cortland Sutton's also off the board. Sutton must have went. Oh, is Sutton off the board? Yeah, he's gone. He must have went a while ago. Javonte went between my last 2 picks. Sutton went in the 8th. He went a while ago. So there's no Denver player in this range to do the Bengals Denver 17 thing. Rashid Shaheed's there as the top available wide receiver. 80 Mitchell behind him. This is where a receiver really starts to thin out. I don't mind feathering in Mitchell at this price either. You're kind of behind the wide receiver window, I would say. Josh Palmer, another way you could play receiver here. But probably the value here is at running back. I've gone Kenneth Walker and Raheem Mostert. I feel like I got the early season touches and volume taken care of. So Devin Singletary is the top available running back, but I don't know that he makes sense for this build. I'd like to go a little bit more upside. I have Gus Edwards as the second one. But Chase Brown is the third available running back, and that's where I'm going to go. It gives me a little bit more of an upside play. And again, this is a Burrow Chase stack, so I get a build out the Bengals offense there. Best Ball Mania draft here. Let's jump into this one. I'm not going to get through all these. We're probably not going to spin the wheel again today. 11:46 my time. I'm at noon. We're going to go over to ship chase or ship chasing. If you guys haven't, just come. Everyone watching here, come with me over there. I'm going to be over there drafting some more in 14 minutes. We'll get through as much more as we can. Justin Jefferson, Chris Olave, Malik Neighbors, Derrick Henry, Xavier Worthy, George Kittle, Deontay Johnson, Rashee Rice, Raheem Mostert. This has 6 receivers. I got Rice as my 6th receiver behind ADP on this team. Derrick Henry and Mostert already, the 32-year-old running back club. George Kittle at receiver. I have Brian Robinson starred here. Why? Maybe I start a couple different running backs and the others went. Javonte Williams went. He would have been one that I maybe would have started as well and just told myself, hey, there's other running backs to add. You already have 6 receivers. Don't really need a tight end. Old running backs, what could go wrong? I know. I know, man. George Kittle, don't really need a tight end too. I'm fine at receiver, and this is not the pocket to be drafting receiver anyway. I got 6 of them. The top quarterback is Tua. I do have Mostert, but I don't have a Miami receiver. We have Lawrence behind him. I don't have Jacksonville. Minnesota, New Orleans, the Giants, Carolina. I have a lot of late-round quarterback options. This can be a 3 QB build. I don't know who the QB1 will be because I don't want just those QBs, but like a Derek Carr, Daniel Jones, or Bryce Young, 2 of those with 1 decent quarterback is a nice 3 QB build. Again, I don't know who the QB1 would be in that scenario. Maybe I just wind up going Derek Carr, Daniel Jones, and Bryce Young. It's a really gross 3 QB. So this has got to be a running back. We're going to just go with my star, Brian Robinson here. I'm sure I had a reason for that. Who do they play in Week 17? Washington? Atlanta. I don't have any players from Atlanta on here. It's not correlation related. All right. We're going to keep moving. Eliminator. Eliminator team. What are we doing in the Eliminator here? Tyreek, Nico, Jalen Hurts, Christian Kirk, Keenan Allen, Evan Ingram, Jaxon Smith-Njigba. That's a 1-0-5-1 at this point. 5 good receivers. Buys all spread out there. I do have 2 Jacksonville receivers. Both Kirk and Ingram. My only 2 Week 12 buy guys right now. I have Hurts unstacked, which is fine. It's a 0 RB build. Jalen Warren's sitting there. He's a really nice bye week at Week 9. Only 2 buys that week for the Eliminator format. You have Pittsburgh and San Fran. I wrote in my article today, it actually makes me think that San Fran is the best offense to be stacking in these Eliminators because I don't usually want to play Pittsburgh, and you're not going to get a lot of other issues with the Week 9 bye if you stack them. Like if I keep building out this Jacksonville thing, it's a Week 12 bye, but there's 6 teams on bye, and it really starts to make it difficult for me to draft anyone else from those other Week 12 teams. But if I built out a San Francisco stack, I mean, okay, I just have to ignore the Steelers now. I mean, it's, you don't want to build it out too big, but you could basically build it and they're your only Week 9 picks. Having said that, that doesn't relate right now. I didn't draft any San Francisco teams onto this team. It's just a little bit of a thought if you're doing eliminator drafts. Ward makes a lot of sense here. The Week 9 bye is a good one to attack here because I already missed on Ayuk and Debo and Kittle and CMC and Purdy. So I'm not going to be hitting San Fran either. Well, Purdy's still there, but I'm not going to draft him without any of those other guys. And I have Jalen Hurts. So I go ahead and grab Jalen Warren here, who I think makes a lot of sense as my RB1. And from a buy perspective, is a really nice fit for the Eliminator. And that build, 10 more minutes, 7 more drafts to get through still. Here's a puppy draft. Amon-Ra, Chris Olave, Cooper Kupp, Trey McBride, Xavier Worthy, Joe Mixon. There's the first time we've seen him. Deontay Johnson, who I took over Rashee Rice, who then went 84 to Nez. Shout out Nez. Didn't see him there, but not a surprise when I see Rashee Rice and see who took it, that it's a sharp like him. I think this is probably an RB pick. I'm good with 5 receivers. Amon-Ra, Olave, Cup, Worthy, Deontay, again, is the 5 receivers. I mean, Cup's a little bit risky, obviously. I feel really good about Amon-Ra, Olave, Deontay, and then if Cup's healthy, about the volume you have earning there, and then Worthy's like the biggest upside swing there is. So that's a really nice top 5 in terms of mixing in guaranteed volume and upside. I can kind of just feather in late round receivers, I think, when I build a receiving core like that. McBride, not probably going to go tight end 2 here, although Njoku's an option. Be ahead of ADP for him. I only have Joe Mixon. I think this is a running back pick. I have not taken a lot of Zach Moss. I've not taken any. Tony Pollard, James Conner, Raheem Mostert are the next names. I probably usually go down to Mostert, but I've taken a decent amount of Mostert. We've just seen him on a few teams. I do think Zach Moss is a very viable pick. He's a nice price here as a guy who signed a pretty good contract. Bengals are a good offense. They overused an inefficient Joe Mixon for years. And it would not surprise me at all if they overuse Zach Moss, even if he's not particularly efficient. So I could go down to like a Trey Benson and try to just get some real upside, but I'm going to take Zach Moss onto the same roster where his replacement is the current RB1, or he's replacing Joe Mixon. Anyway, Mixon and Moss on the same team. All right. Ooh, I got another eliminator. I'm having fun with the eliminators. Let's jump into that. 1-1-5-1. Again, really kind of avoiding the running backs. Oh, this is where I just took Jaylen Warren. I got back on the clock immediately. Okay. We just talked through the Jaylen Warren pick. I'm back on the clock. I just got on the clock on this team. I have Evan Ingram. I'm going to add Brock Bowers to him and make it a 2 tight end build. That's the one thing. I think with the 0 RB, you do want to make sure you get tight end and QB upside in the eliminator. That's the point of providing the floor. You have a lot of depth at receiver. You do have tight end and QB upside. And so even though you don't have the real upside at running back, you should have a floor. It's still a good pocket for a receiver, though. I think I should probably get my wide receiver 6 here. Well, it's a good pocket because Cortland Sutton and Mike Williams are there. Then it falls off. They both have tough buys. Week 12 buy for Mike Williams. I already have 2 Jacksonville players, and I've contemplated Trevor Lawrence as well, adding him maybe at the next turn. If he's there, I think I would have to make the Jacks double stack and then just cut it off there, Lawrence, Kirk, Ingram, and not take a lot of other Week 12 guys. So I can't take Mike Williams. I could take Cortland Sutton, but then I have 2 wide receivers that are Week 14. That wouldn't be the end of the world. Maybe just grab another running back. Maybe grab it's Tony Pollard, James Conner, Raheem Mostert. Trey Benson's such a handcuff. I'm gonna pull Javonte Williams all the way up ahead of these guys. He's an eliminator-ass pick. We talked a lot about Javonte. I'm excited. Yeah, the JSN thoughts and vibes. Again, the NFC West version of Stealing Bananas that's coming up is a great spot to get that. I'm only going to be able to do a couple more of these because I got to go to ship chasing here in 5 minutes. Do you have a plan for what you want your best ball portfolio to look like when it's all done? Percent of 0 RB, hero RB, Russell? I don't. This is a good question. I only did about 100 drafts last year. I didn't think through this type of stuff as much as other people who have played a lot more have started to think through that kind of stuff. I got some questions after my first 2 shows about some of the combinatorial stuff. I was talking on one of the earlier streams about just like, I think I took Amari Cooper on a team where I had Barkley, and I was like, I'm just going to stack players that I'm not really into on the same team. And they were asking if, that made a lot of sense because you're kind of stacking combinatorial stuff. And I was like, honestly, I'm just not even really considering that at this stage. Maybe as I start to get more and more volume that, I'll start to consider that stuff more. But at this stage, it's like, I want to optimize each draft the way that I think I should play it. And I'm generally pretty comfortable with that. It's how I play season long as well. And I play not as many teams, but I build a high stakes portfolio that's got a lot of money invested. And I'm usually willing to put a lot of eggs in one basket and live with them being the right decisions for each of those rosters. And even if that means I'm overweight on one thing that I'm not that confident in, or at least confident enough to be as overweight as I am, it's still a move that I'll make. This is going to have to be my last pick here. Because I got to go. I'm sitting here chatting about portfolio management and everything. We are at the turn on a Christian McCaffrey 101 team. McCaffrey, Nico Collins, Jalen Waddle, CJ Stroud got the stack with Nico. Mark Andrews, the bring back with CJ Stroud, Keon Coleman, Chris Godwin. It's a 1-1-4-1 through this point. I'd love to get another receiver because I do have an anchor at every other position. It just makes those builds so much, or those positions so much nicer. I don't have a reason to go like QB2. I don't really have a reason to go tight end 2. David Njoku would be a fine pick here, but not for this build. The running backs are Zach Moss and Tony Pollard, Trey Benson, Javonte Williams. I don't really have to go there. I have a CMC team. I can kind of punt RB2. This is a wide receiver pick. Sutton and Tyler Lockett, Mike Williams is that little tier that is kind of a drop off for me. Oh, this is a turn. I got to take 2 of them. And I'm going to take 2 wide receivers here. I'm going to get up to 6 because I don't think Keon Coleman and Chris Godwin are a really strong wide receiver 3, wide receiver 4. But the opportunity to add both Sutton and Tyler Lockett here gets me to a more comfortable position through 6, even though my wide receiver 3 is relatively weak. Nico Collins, Jalen Waddle at the top is nice, and I still have Stroud, McCaffrey, Andrews. Yeah, that's a good pick. That's a good little turn for that team. It was nice that those 2 guys got there. David is right. We are going to wrap up this edition of Slow Draft Chasing. We're going to jump over to Ship Chasing. This is a shorter version. We've done some 3-hour streams. I needed to get some picks done. I figured I'd fire this up, jump on. A lot fewer people hanging out this time, which is understandable because I did it very last minute. I appreciate all you guys who did jump in. Again, if you missed this, if you're watching this later, if you're listening to this on audio and you want to be able to show up for some of the live stuff, turn on the notifications on YouTube because I might just randomly do this kind of a thing, or I'm probably going to. It's like when I get backed up on a lot of drafts, why wouldn't I just fire this up? It's been so much fun. I've appreciated you guys so much. I've got the subscribers up over 600 already on this channel. I've done like 2 shows. Love you guys for all subscribing and liking and commenting. So much awesome feedback from me as a creator. It's so cool to get that positive feedback. It makes me want to do so much more stuff. It's invigorating. I haven't had a project like this in a while, and I'm so pumped about it and so excited to keep doing it. So just some genuine appreciation from me there. Jump on over to Ship Chasing. I wish I could redirect you there, but I don't know how to do it yet. Eventually, I'll figure out how to do some of these things. Love you guys. Until next time, peace.